You think anybody's going to come out for 2 continuous services like that? He said, you just get here, the people will be here. I'm glad to see you. I was beginning to wonder I was going to preach to 5 people. But we're going to go over a few things this evening. And how many people here have never heard the word Illuminati before? Oh boy, I have a problem here. Rather than go over the history of what it is and how it came into being, I'm going to concentrate on what it is doing today. Now, many of you accept too many things that are just because they're there, and you don't question why are they there. So many things in America we've accepted as normal because we're used to them. And we've grown to accept them, and that's just exactly what the Illuminati wants you to do. Now, I promised the teenagers the other day that I wasn't going to let their parents off any easier than I let them off. So you've got it coming to you. But quickly to tell some of the people some things, the Illuminati is an organization that the Luciferian religion or religion of the occult or witchcraft or paganism or the force or whatever you want to call it is its religion, and its priests are those of witchcraft, but it is a political financial organization. And real quickly, rather than have you take out a $1 bill or any of that, you can do that later. I'll draw you this and try to explain the Illuminati through this, and then we'll go on with the teaching. I'm not used to one of these things. I'm used to a blackboard, so we'll try the best. Now, I only write the stories at Chick Publications. Now I've learned. Okay. We'll just roll it over. We go from this direction. Which direction? This way? Oh, okay. I was wondering why everybody was laughing. I knew I wasn't that bad of an artist. I'm terrible, but not that bad. We do it right? Yeah, we did do it right. How about that? Yeah, I'm going to. All right, this is the Illuminati. I'll describe it before I describe myself. The I in there means Lucifer, and the capstone is the Rothschilds. If you notice, it's suspended from the pyramid because the Rothschilds are considered deities, supernatural beings dwelling in human bodies, gods to be worshipped, not human beings. And so they are the Godhead. And their priest is the Council of 13 of the Grand Druid Council, which I was a member of. So the things I'm saying from here, up where I know what took place. The next council is the Council of 33. That is the 33 highest initiate Masons in the world. And the next is the Council of 500. That is what many people refer to as the Bilderbergers. That's the people you make rich every time you go shopping. Now, where I come from is the Todds were originally called the Collinses, the particular branch of the family that I'm from, and they have been in the Illuminati since May 1st, 1776, when it was organized. In fact, they were one of the organizing families. They were also the originators of witchcraft within the United States. They brought it here in 1626. So this is where I came from. I was raised a witch, and all my life I thought I was into witchcraft till 1970, when I shot and killed an officer in Germany after re-enlisted, and the Illuminati stepped in with the aid of a senator that later became Attorney General and a congressman, and about 3 generals from the Pentagon, ordering my immediate honorable discharge and the destructions of my military records and court-martial records, which was done. And then I learned that witchcraft was more than just casting spells, that there were political and financial people involved in this thing. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. Rather than being a lot of people like Gary Allen, who starts back in 1776, I'm going to start at an interesting time. I'm going to start December 1963. The reason I'm starting there is that is the time, in fact, the 21st of December 1963, that it was decided that the Christian church, the fundamental Christian church, was a threat to the Illuminati within the United States, And at that time, they thought they could take care of it by infiltration, by bribing, by blackmail, and by scandal. Now, as of a year ago, they decided that that's useless and that the only answer to the Christian church is to burn it to the ground. And we'll be talking about quite a few things like that today. But this is what I came off of. And at that time, the reason, I'm going to say a few things. If they're contrary to things you've heard before, traditional, just pray for me. I'm sure they're going to be. The reason that the Christian church became a threat to the Illuminati is that a particular president existed that time, and that president, through the man that helped set up the Bay of Pigs invasion, became a Christian. It was one for the Lord, and that's John Kennedy. And because of this, they thought they could threaten and force him back in. They tried for 3 months. In fact, 30 days before his death, the Pope ordered him to Rome to appear before him and accept communion at his hand. And Kennedy walked out of the Vatican refusing communion. And that's when they decided that he had to go. So they ordered his death. So if you're wondering they're ever going to solve the Kennedy assassination, don't you believe it. Now, when I joined the Illuminati, knowing, I guess I was a member of the Illuminati since I was 14, but I did not know it was the Illuminati. Now, I'm going to give you a chance to ask some questions, and the reason I'm going fast is I have to leave here and go preach a service. So I'm going to try to go through some of these things and wise you up to some of the things the Illuminati has been doing to the Christian church. That's all I'm going to concentrate on, is what they've been doing to the Christian church. And then I'm going to let you ask a lot of questions and try and go back over the pieces I've skipped over by accident. Now, when they decided to do this, they knew that demons were very real. There's nobody that's ever come out of the occult that would say that the devil's not as active as he was during the time of Jesus, and therefore neither is his army. And they're extremely real today. I would like to say more than ever, but I'm sure they were just as real in Jesus' time. And they know that there are weak Christians as well as there are strong Christians. There's two types of Christians, and they're familiar with this. In fact, I learned this in witchcraft, not in the Christian church. There are Christians who have accepted Jesus as Savior, and there are Christians who have accepted Him as Lord. And there is a difference. In fact, I was telling the pastor's wife I love the Gaither Trio because I've learned more about the Lordship of Christ listening to their music and their testimonies than probably anybody else. And they have a beautiful illustration on one of their live albums of where the woman's 2-year-old boy was down at a picnic, and the grandmother and him was playing ball with plastic ball and bat. And he got mad and threw the bat down and started stamping on the ground and says, "Grandma, you missed my bat again. You missed my bat again." And that's just about us when we get in trouble, or when we don't think the Lord did it our way. We say, "Lord, you missed my bat again." That's because we're trying to run it and tell the Lord what to do. Now that's being Savior. When He's Lord, we say, "Lord, what am I supposed to do for you today? How do you want it run?" And there's a difference. And they know the difference in the occult world. And they try to keep everybody at the Savior station. They figure they've lost them anyway, but they'd like to make their testimony so weak and so void that they're not a threat to them. And they use several things to do it. Their number one instrument in destroying a Christian's strength is music. Now, I'm sure a lot of you parents had great testimonies of your kids going home about how great a speaker I am and so on rock music. That's because my favorite thing is to burn rock music. I just get such a pleasure out of destroying that garbage. And there's a reason that I get that pleasure. I used to lead Zodiac Productions, the largest rock booking concert agency in the United States. They've decided they ought to change their name. They do this quite often. The Illuminati change their name around. But at that time, they're the main reason that the Beatles and the Stones and Crosby, Still, Nash and Young and Creedence Clearwater Revival and other groups that belong to the occult had concerts in this country. They have now had such influence, and since the Illuminati has bought most of their record companies anyway, you cannot produce records in this country as a new group getting started like KISS, unless you are a member of some occult brotherhood and have an initiation scar on your wrist. Now, I was shocked that one of the young people here knew a particular story that happened about 6 months ago. KISS was having a press conference over a new album they were releasing, and this press conference was being held in Hollywood over at one of the record companies. And somebody said, well, KISS, that's a strange name. What's it all about? And the guy stood up and says, well, I guess we ought to tell you all about ourselves. We didn't get together and form our own group. We were told to form this group by our ministers, by our church. And they said, oh, we didn't know you were Christians. Oh, I like the way the guy thinks. And they said, oh, we're not. We're Satanists. And they all pulled out their ministers' cards and showed they were priests of the Satanic Brotherhood of America. And they said, oh, and they kind of skipped over. They were trying to get away from it. They didn't realize they weren't going to get away from it. And one of the guys stood up and says, oh, well, you know, all the teeny boppers really, really like you. And they say, well, we're not too interested in the girls. We all like the guys. And they all said they were homosexuals except one. That destroyed some of the girls the other day. And then they went on to say, by the way, our name means Kings in Satanic Service. That's what KISS stood for. Now, that's just one group. A lot of them are out there. Most of the groups pick their names for their band according to which language. Now, how many CBers do we have here that talk on the CB? Come on, you can confess that. The Lord will forgive you. Okay. Now, I have a CB in my car. I try not to use it unless I have to. But I have learned one thing, that supposedly CBers talk in what is called English. I'm not so sure some of the times. But you know what I mean. They have the words smoky and 10-4 and everything else and on down the road and so on. Okay, they have a set of code words. Unless you know what they're talking in, it's a lot like what the teenagers talk in today. Unless you know what they're talking in, you can't understand the conversation. Well, the witches have had a language for several thousand years old that they communicate in. And it's English, I think. And it consists of many words. It means many, phrases and so on. They call them, actually, what they call it is witches' roots, R-U-D-E-S, roots. And most of the rock music is written in witch language, okay? And many of the groups pick their names by phrases out of the Witchcraft Bible, the Book of Shadows. And the Beatles, now, there's one of the most potent charms within witchcraft is the scarab, which is a beetle. And that's why they chose it. Most people who are great Beatle fans, and this goes back to some of the oldsters here, do not realize what the occult calls the Beatles. They call them the four prophets, the four angels from Lucifer. And they believe in them so strongly that for the first time in witchcraft history, a record album and the words of that record album have been adopted as part of the Witchcraft Bible, the Book of Shadows. And that was the double white album that the Beatles sung. They consider every song on there to be a prophecy from Lucifer of the end times. Okay? Just to give you a little clue. Now, don't rush out and buy one, but you can rush home and burn the one you got. Now, I know a lot of the rock singers firsthand because of booking and because many of them were in occult brotherhoods that I used to go and minister at and so on when I was over. Three Dog Night all came out of one coven in Tempe, Arizona. And I know Santana, they were brought up from down in South America, and his brother started another group, and I know many of the groups. In fact, my closest friend in the world is David Crosby from Crosby, Still, Nash & Young. And I saw him, in fact, I'd like you to pray for him because I do really feel for him. I saw him about 3 days before Christmas last year, and the man is almost dead. He's on $200 a day worth of cocaine. And I talked with him, I said, I've been out of this a long time, Dave. I'd like to know, do they still require at the record companies that when
a song is ready to be pressed, in other words, the records are pressed and sent out, is it required over in one of the temple rooms? See, most of you don't know that all the major record companies have a room set aside about this size for a witchcraft coven to come in and do rights at for the company. I said, is it still required for the coven to come in and perform a spell over the music so that people will buy it? They said, oh yes. Now the reason for rock music is not to make money. The Illuminati doesn't need money. They got probably 99.9% of the money in the world. They don't need money. What they want with rock music is the same reason that they created the jewelry I'll be talking about in a moment. And that is to weaken your Christian life. Now, when a record is done, the priest of that coven ordered demons to follow, one demon to follow every rock record that comes off of that master copy. Now, if you don't think it's done, too bad. I want you to stop and ask yourself, what strong Christian, what soul-winning Christian do you know that plays rock music? I've made a statement many times in my meetings. You show me a strong Christian, and don't come up and tell me you're a strong Christian, got the rock music, because I'll set you down and we'll go over your life. I've never met one. There isn't any. Only weak Christians listen to rock music. By the way, only weak Christians listen to Jesus rock music also. Now, I know a little story about Jesus rock, since we're talking about infiltration. I was in Phoenix on a guest speaking tour. I was living in San Antonio. I was there on a function at one of the Grand Druid meetings. In fact, it was an extremely important meeting that was taking place that was discussing the destruction of Jerry Falwell's church. Oh yeah, all the big churches are discussed one time or the other. And when we were there, I was given a check that was made out on the Lords of London Bank in London. That's where it originated. It was actually made out on the Chase Manhattan Bank here, but it was funds from that bank. It was stamped on it. And it was to be delivered to a Reverend Chuck Smith, Costa Mesa, California. Now, old Chucky, he had started out with and started a thing called the Jesus People. That's really where it got started with him. And the occult got very upset. The Illuminati was extremely upset because ministers were standing up and preaching against rock music, and the kids were burning their music. Now, they just couldn't stand the idea that these demons weren't in Christians' homes and affecting Christians' lives. And they couldn't understand. It was puzzled me how the Christians found out about this. We thought we were so carefully had it hidden that we couldn't understand why Christian ministers were preaching against rock, since they didn't know the real reason. But something inside ministers across the country was saying this is wrong. So how do you get these demons, these same demons, into people's hands if they're not going to play the rock? You make it Christian. Standard term in the Illuminati, if you can't beat them, join them. So this $4 million check was the second $4 million this man had received in a 2-year period. And with it, he built Maranatha Productions. And Maranatha Productions started what we call today Jesus Rock. Now, watch out. I'm going to give you a little warning. The Illuminati just bought the biggest Christian record and music company in the United States and probably in the world about a year ago. And already we're seeing a change in the music. They bought Word Ministries in Texas. RCA bought them up. And RCA belongs to the Illuminati. And they've already brought out a company called Myrrh. Okay? And Myrrh's emblem is the ruins of Stonehenge. That's one of the strongest witchcraft sites. That would be, for a witch to go to Stonehenge, would be like a Christian to go to Bethlehem. It's that holy of a place in the occult. And they mark their records. And one particular witch we can't stand that a lot of Christians have in their home, we enjoy burning her records as much as we enjoy burning the Beatles, and that's Honey Tree. And she sings for them. Now, we know many of these people because they started out in rock music, and they were ordered over into the Christian rock. So if I can get you Christian rock music, that's how much as fun as getting your rock music. Now, the other thing that I want to say before we get back to politics a second is this. 5 years ago, I could stand in a meeting and say, this is how you tell a witch, by their jewelry, and these are the symbols. I can't do that today because the Christians are wearing the same jewelry. Now, most people don't know the significance of an inanimate object when its creation was ordered by the devil. Now, I don't think anybody here doubts that the Word of God was ordered by the Holy Spirit through man. Well, certain writings and certain pieces of jewelry were ordered by the devil through occult people. And these pieces of jewelry mean things you don't know. Now, about 3 years ago, the occult changed all the names to these pieces of jewelry. What they've been called for thousands of years, they changed their names and called them something else. Some of the names don't even make sense. And then they started selling them through several major companies that they owned. Federal department stores, which meant that they sold them through Sears and Penny's. Then they sold and Kmart and Gold Circle and so on. Then they sold them through Standard Oil store, Montgomery Ward's. And then they wanted to get them into everybody's homes that maybe didn't buy them in the store, so they sold them through Avon. And Avon's catalog this year is unreal. It's got more jewelry in it from the occult than I've ever seen anywhere else. By the way, if you buy from Avon, we have a cassette tape, we don't have it with us, of a woman that's with Word of Life Ministries that was one of their biggest executives in Maryland. And she had to be delivered from demons because of the jewelry she was selling, and her testimony is outstanding of how she tried to kill herself just because the jewelry was in her house and the demonic activity that it created. So you might consider it twice. Now, these are the symbols. I know I'm drawing them upside down again, but you'll get the message, I think. Now we're drawing them over there. Let me go over here. I'm not a good artist, but it'll give you a symbol. 5-pointed star called the pentagram, or the pinnacle. The 6-pointed star was originally called the hexagram or the crest of Solomon. It's always been used for demon worship. Just recently has anybody called it the Star of David. In fact, I'll tell you a little story about this. One isn't a close friend, but the girl she lives with in marriage is. And there's this television star, and we're going to be talking about television in a minute, that a lot of you Christians probably think is a good, clean Christian show. Or I can't say a Christian show, a good, clean show that maybe you can slip by and your preacher won't skin you for it. And this woman is a homosexual that stars in the show. That's Cindy Williams from Laverne and Shirley. And she lives with a rock star named Carole King. Carol's an old friend of mine. And Cindy thought it was not fair that homosexuals weren't allowed to be ministers in witchcraft, that they could only be church members. So they started their own brotherhood. And they adopted the hexagram inside the circle. This means demonic possession in the occult. Boy, she hit it right on the button. It's probably the two worst things, homosexuals and witches. The next one, and you'll see on many television stars, is the moon and the 5-pointed star. It means you are an ordained priest or priestess of witchcraft. And I've seen many television stars lately wearing this on TV. That's because you're not supposed to know what it means. Now, last one, as I said, I'm not a good artist, is the Ankh, and now calling it the Cross of Life. They like to change the names of things. Now, this is what it means. Don't come up and tell me it means a Christian symbol. I came out of the occult. They created that thing. I know what it means. It's not a Christian cross. In fact, it came from Egypt thousands of years before Christ ever walked the earth in a form of a human body. It means that you despise virginity, that you practice orgies, that you worship the sun god Ra, which is the Egyptian name for Lucifer, and that you believe in reincarnation, which means you don't believe in hell and you don't believe in heaven. So if you don't believe any of these things, don't wear it. Now there's another one. I'm not too good of an artist. I can't draw these, come to think of it. And It's called now the Italian horn. I don't know why they call it that since it was invented in Ireland. But it's been called, its real names is the leprechaun's staff, the fairy's wand, and the unicorn's horn. And it comes two ways. Sometimes it's a twisted horn like this, a spiral horn, and sometimes it's a curved horn. It means literally you trust the devil for your finance. Now if you don't wear it. I'm so tired of seeing Christian ladies wearing this around their neck. I don't even talk to them. I tell them to take it off before I talk to them. I came out of that thing. Now they got these in your hands for a reason. And the reason is this. These things attract demons. Believe me, they really do, especially the six-pointed star. And if, in fact, we never conjured a demon that we didn't draw this on the floor for the demon to appear in the six-pointed one. In fact, the word to cast a bad spell, to hex somebody, comes from this star. That gives you kind of an idea of its evil. So I'm not against jewelry, or I would preach against all jewelry. I'm just against jewelry that the devil told people to create for his worship service and for his priesthood. And it doesn't have any place in a Christian's life. Now, give you a little political things, and before everybody rushes out of here tonight and sends telegrams off to Washington, D.C., I got saved out of the Illuminati. You can save the money of sending your telegrams. If they want to vote something through, they're going to vote it through, and you're never going to know about it. I'll give you a little tip of when the Illuminati is up to something in the United States. When you turn on your television set and you hear the senators are arguing over a certain bill in Washington, you've got to say, what are they really passing that we're not seeing while we're seeing this? Now, the whole reason for the Panama Canal, and they plan on having the world before the Panama Canal ever falls in the hands of Panama, so they're not doing anything anyway. It's a smokescreen. In the time everybody's been concerned over the Panama Canal, 5 bills have been before Congress, and 2 of them have passed that you never heard about. And one, I believe, passed last week, or the week before. So I guess it's been 3. The one that just passed is called House Bill 41. Beautiful little thing. It states in House Bill 41 that if your church is not a member of a denomination of the World Council of Churches or the National Council of Churches, that you could lose your tax status. You must go through an investigation and a court hearing. Unless, and there's a little side thing, unless you have a membership of 500 of joining members of your church. So I think you're safe here, but a lot of churches aren't. Next, anybody that gives to a Christian organization separate from a member of a denomination of the National Council of Churches, there exists in this whole bill, the name of the people who give to them that claim tax deduction, name, address, phone number, and work address is to be printed in every post office in the United States for everybody to look at. Now, you may not think that's important, but I came out of a radical organization that's dying to find out who's spending money in the enemy camp and would love to pay you a very unfriendly visit with something come flying through your window some night. That goes boom, you know. So this bill is very important, and it just got passed. Of course, you never heard about it. It's the bills you don't hear about that you have to worry about. There's one up for vote now that just came out of committee. It was voted down 8 years ago, and therefore some of you may know about it. But the president that we have now has considered it a necessary bill, so he's been pushing it. It's called the Genocide Act. Anybody ever heard of the Genocide Act? A few of you? Do you know that if you win somebody, even if they're over 21, and you win them from the faith that their parents bore them into, like Catholic, Jews, witchcraft, maybe a Methodist becomes born again, something like this, they can have you arrested and tried for genocide. And you can serve time in federal penitentiary for it if this law is passed. And it's going to get passed. Now, we read over at the other church where I'm at a document from a Senator Colin of Arizona, who is a senator that sits on the Committee of International Banking for the United States and the Federal Reserve Commission and so on. And this letter was written in April of 1976. It said that at that moment, the Federal Reserve Act was ready to number everybody in the United States for the purpose of buying and selling, and was going to by 1980. Now, how many heard or have saw or heard on the news the proposed United States security card? Anybody here? If you have, lift your hand so a few people know I'm not crazy. Couple. Okay. Now, we have got to look at this, and we thought it most interesting that our president bragged that he drew the card and designed it himself and everything on it. Considering that it's kind of an ivory pearl collar with a gray diagram with black typing over it. And the gray diagram consists of this. Can you see it? Somebody tell me what it is. 666. They call it the inverted 9. It's exactly what's on it. If you go to the World Common, excuse me, I got to give them credit yet. National or European Common Market countries, you will find this on much of the clothing. Some years back when the currency was printed in 1973 in Brussels, and we bought $10 billion of it, and we have letters to confirm it by senators that we did do this. This world currency, this was on it. But then the president we have today said that his security card makes it so that nobody ever has to carry money anymore, and that will stop robberies. You just carry the card. Now, if you don't think it's close, have you been noticing all the department stores placing computer cash registers in there lately? They're all hooked into a computer system. We'll go ahead and turn this thing off. Pastor, how do I turn it off? Make it hot over here. There is a computer system that many people have heard about in Brussels. Some of them have even heard there's a sister computer in Dallas. I'm sorry, getting ahead of myself. In Amsterdam. Thank you. In Amsterdam, that they call the Beast. They're talking computers. Actually, the computer is larger than this sanctuary here. Just the computer, not the building. There is one just like it in Dallas, Texas, 4 stories below the IBM building. It's called the National Securities Computer. And as of the 1st of last year, the California National Guard switched their patch over to these 3 overlapping 6s. We have confirmed it. We haven't in Georgia yet because we haven't had a chance to talk to anybody that's in the National Guard. But in Florida and Massachusetts and other states, we have confirmed that by the end of this coming year, all the National Guard was to switch their patch over to that 666. And they all have been hooked as the first of this year into the computer in Dallas. Now, this is the computer center that all of the cash registers and all of the stores that are switching to computer cash registers are hooked into. And they, in turn, are hooked into Brussels and Amsterdam. Now, that's a fact. That's not guesswork. Another fact is that all the stores within the next year and a half are to switch to some type of computer verification system, even if it's just the thing that hooks into your phone for those 2 extra buttons on your phone that you can zip the card through and it gives a reading over the phone. That's because our president has said, and if you're wondering why that, I guess I don't like peanut pickers. I don't know. You'll have to excuse me. I know he's a fellow Georgian. I mean, if you want to claim him, you're welcome to him. He has said that we need proof that everybody in the United States is a law-abiding citizen. I'm getting tired of hearing that term. He's wore it out a little. And that in order to check up on that, what better place than when somebody goes in to buy the groceries or the gasoline to check up on it. So everybody's to have a computer card. And of course, if you don't take the card, you can't buy anything, and you're a bad citizen. Somewhere along the line, I think they thought you were going to get hunted down if you were a Christian. Believe me, the organized Christian church isn't going to say anything about it. Now, there's 2 doctrines. Both of them are pre-trib. One, you'll be here to see the mark, and some of you won't be here to see the mark passed out. Whether you believe it or not, the mark is still coming. I'm just verifying it, so whichever way you want to believe. But the point is, they plan on passing this thing out in about 1.5 years. They really do. They have everything being hooked up for it now. So the times are growing close, and this was planned out. Now, I'm going to give you a reading list before I go to questions and answers because I'm running short on time here and I want to donate some time to it. And the first book on the list is one of their books. Now, I tell Christians not to buy any occult books because of the demons that come with it. But this book isn't one of those. It's a political book written by them. And I want to give you a warning. You may not want to buy it after I say all about the book before I give its title. Some years back, 12 years ago, which makes the book so fantastic considering that when you get halfway into the book, you find out we don't have any oil and all the coal mines are on strike and then they blow them up when they try to go back to work. Sound familiar? Written 12 years ago. Farmers are on strike too in the book. People are starving to death. Interesting. Anyway, this book was written at the order of Philip Rothschild, and he chose one of his mistresses to write it, who was already an author of many communist books and books in the world, and she was very well known as a novel writer. And so she wrote this code book in the form of a novel, 1,100 pages long. Now, the only problem with it is since it was written a novel, it's like a lot of garbage that women read today from the book clubs and so on. You have some passages in that you ought to burn along with Larry Flint's magazine. But you could skip over them. I don't recommend it for anything but a serious student of the conspiracy. But it does give, after you get past the first 200 pages, they write the book very interesting. They write the book like you looking at the conspiracy and not knowing about it, and things happen in the newspaper and television, and you go, oh, well, that's just the times. And then they get into three people planning the whole thing. They plan derailment of trains. And in fact, I would say most of the book is about the derailment of trains and the coal strike and the lack of fuel. And then it goes into other things. But the book is called Atlas Shrugged. Like you shrug your shoulders. And I found it in almost every bookstore that I've been in Atlanta. So you shouldn't have any problem finding it. Now for the good ones. There's one called None Dare Call. Now, before I give you Gary Allen's books, I want to tell you he's anti-Christian, but not in his books. He's just anti-Illuminatist. He's a member of the John Birch Society, and he kind of looks at the Illuminati one-sided, but it does give you some historical facts. None Dare Call Conspiracy, the Rockefeller Files. There's one more that he didn't write, but his name is on it, because the man who wrote it wasn't well known. And he came out of the Illuminati, and he wanted to release the facts of a very strong, important person to the Rothschilds. And he wrote the book, and Gary Allen had it printed with his name on it, and 2 weeks later, the real author of the book was killed. It's called Jimmy Carter, Jimmy Carter. There's more to your peanut picker than meets the eye, than Billy Beer and Ruth Carter Stapleton. Now, I'm going to go ahead. Oh, one other one. There's a good Christian book called The Day the Dollar Dies, and it's strange. I've been to probably 10 Christian bookstores in this city, and not one of them carry that book, and this is the first city I've been to that book's not carried, and they don't know why it's not carried, except the owners of the bookstores have told them not to carry it. It's the only book they're not supposed to carry. So you might go in and say, I want it, and maybe they'll get it for you. It's called The Day the Dollar Dies. Now, I'm going to open for questions. And do me a favor before we get this. See, I handle questions across the United States, and by now I can probably ask them better than you can. Don't give me any personal incidences about spells and demons and stuff in your life. Maybe a personal interest, maybe if your path has crossed the Illuminati in some way, talk about that if you want to give a personal experience. But otherwise, let's stay to questions on things that have been said tonight and that are either confusing you or something you think somebody else ought to know or so on. So we'll just go with that. I'm sure the teenagers that were here the other night are at chapel. I had to cut them off because of time. Maybe they want to start it out tonight with a few. Okay, right here.
What can you tell about the universe? Not certainly greater things like we're not knowing.
Those symbols, just the ones I've given. There's one other one I didn't draw in there, and that's the scarab, the beetle. Okay? Yes?
Spell Illuminati. How do you spell it?
Just a minute, I'll spell it for you. Well, the reason that I'm not saying the Illuminati, to even say the Illuminati in the occult, even for the Council of 13, meant that they're going to take you out somewhere and kill you. It's an unspeakable word. In fact, the leader of the Council of 13 and his enforcer, Isaac Bonowitz, both members of it, Gavin Frost and Bonowitz, came to me and said, we know the Christians don't believe half of what you say, and we don't mind you talking about witchcraft because they still think we fly on broomsticks. That's what they think of you. When actually, they're right about most Christians in that form. But would you please stop using the word Illuminati before we have to kill you? Okay? They say Mariah. That's what they say, the conquering wind. Illuminati is the following. ILLUMINATI. It means the light bearers. It's Latin for the light bearers. Okay? In the back. I don't know him. I know of him, yes.